All right, here we go. So check this out. The starter. We're working on the 48. We're back to the 48 now. And I got the starter on the table here. I'm going to pull up a little chair. We'll go through this, all right? So here we are. This is the starter out of the 1948 Plymouth, right? So the old starter and the other old starter I pulled, the teeth were broken off. If you guys go back and watch the last video on this, the teeth were broken off about that far back, right? Where's my camera? Camera's on this side. Okay, so I ordered a new one, and it did not match. They're not the same thing, okay? So I tried to swap it out. I took apart the end of it, tried to get in there to get the pin out that goes in there. It just became a thing, right? So I went over to my buddies, and he said, well, we can weld it up. That's what they used to do. So they welded it up for me. I spent this morning on the Dremel, matching it up to this, right? So I've got it about 95% matched up. I've got it matched up well enough. I have to take just a little bit more off of that one right there. I'm not for sure. But I've got it matched up pretty well enough right now that I believe it's going to work. The weld looks solid. Once I ground it down, the welds look solid. So let's put a starter back together. Let's see here. Let me pull this down just a little further. And there we go. So this is actually really simple to do. They look scary in the beginning, and the first time I took it apart and put it back together, it probably took me an hour because I kind of had to teach myself what was in here. I tend to go to YouTube videos only after I'm completely stumped, because it's really just nuts and bolts, right? Start taking screws out until it's apart. So first thing is we're going to line up our first screw holes, which is that on the opposing sides there. These other spots where this cutout is for the long screws that go through this that we'll put on here in a minute. So let me find my screws, and we'll get this started real quick. And yeah, pause it for just a second while I do the fiddly part. All right, fiddly part complete, which is getting the screw started. So this is actually kind of cool setup, right? So the thing about automotive is the difference between this and a new starter is materials and a little bit of design. They really haven't come up with a better way to do it than what we're dealing with right here. It just changed shapes, kind of like cars did in general, right? It just feels like over the years, in the beginning, the initial, innovators of vehicles and stuff like that, they were building new stuff. The guys back in Hudson and all those other guys that were just doing all these innovative things. And then regulations came in, and regulations the problem with regulations is they're put in place to make people safe. Like, oh, you have to have seatbelts, right? So once they write that law that you have to have seatbelts, people stop thinking of other ways to restrain in the vehicle, right? Other ways to make the vehicle safe. And what do we have? We have exactly the same seatbelt as we had when seatbelts came out. They got a little bit better mechanism in them. They're a little bit harder to replace, but it's an inertia reel that locks up when you get into an accident. Innovation goes away with regulation. It kind of is what it is. It's not, I don't think it's good. All right, so the next step is we got a little pin on this, right? So we find a little spot on here. There's a little spot. We're going to drop this right on here. The magnets are inside here. Let's show you the magnets real quick. So there's magnets inside there. There's the winding. So we'll go ahead and slide this guy back together. Find our pin. Wherever it went. Drop it in that hole. We go to the next step. So they really made this to where you couldn't mess it up. But if you notice right there, I did mark it before I took it apart. I tend to mark things as I take them apart, even if I know that's probably going to go back together pretty easily. So this is what holds the brushes right here. So the brushes are kind of the hardest part of this whole thing, which doesn't mean that they're necessarily hard. They're just fiddly. It's the fiddly bit that gets you, right? So we're going to put that in there. Our brushes are hanging out the side right now. We're going to put those in a second, but as you see, nothing's really held together right now. So let me drop this back in here real quick. Drop that there. Then we need to line up this with the holes that come through which is really cool because there's another pin up here. And if we drop that on there, physics say that these line up. All right, so let me bring this down a little bit and see how far we can go. There we go. All right, so now the next fiddly bit's not too fiddly. It's just a matter of getting these screws started here, one here, dropping those in there. Anyway, regulation kills innovation. Why? Because once something's good enough and the government says this is good enough, then that's what people do. And they don't innovate around it. They just try to make more money off of what the government says they have to do things, right? So I'm sure if the government would not have put in regulations that every vehicle has to have a seatbelt. I'm just using seatbelts because it's a generalization. I think seatbelts are great. I think they save lives. But I think that there's probably been a better way to build a car that's safer, that never will exist because regulations say you have to build things this way. So, what do we have? We've got the starter. Now we got to do the fiddly bits. All right. So this is the part, when I say fiddly bits, it's the part where your finger dexterity and a little bit of creative tool usage can make things really easy. I'll be right back. All right, so I had to move out into the sun for this part. Isn't that cool? Anyway, so our brushes. I'm going to try to do this kind of on camera, but the brush is right here. This is what goes on the back side of that shiny part right there. And inside here, pull this down, there's a spring, all right? This spring right here, I'm pulling up, I'm going to pull up in a second. There we go. So this spring right here, all right? That spring sits on the back side right in between these two wires. And I can tell you, if you try to put all four of those on and this cap on at the same time, it can probably be done, but you will not have any sanity left in your world because these springs do not allow you to do that very well. But the right tool, camera's backwards, right tool for the job works really well. So let's do the fiddly bits. We got that one in. Next one. First time I put this together, it probably took me an hour and a half. And that hour and a half was me figuring out how to do what I'm doing right now. Putting these in by hand. So, from the back, the way I'm sure they were designed to be put together. And then it's in underneath the spring right there. So, two more. Electric motors haven't changed. The first vehicles were electric, right? So we're making it back to electric vehicles because, well, you know, big oil companies and things that are easy to make back in the day. We went to gasoline cars for some reason, which, don't get me wrong, I love my gasoline vehicles, but I do love my EV. I have a Mach-E. I do like that. It's very convenient. It's nice. It's much cheaper. I pay for fuel once a month. It's easier to budget, a lot of things. But fiddly bits be done. I'm going to go ahead and put the cover back on this. And we're going to take this starter, which we have remanufactured ourselves. I know it looks a little rough, but it's smoother than it looks. Just what a Dremel looks like when you, yeah, I might want to knock that off. But, yeah, got a couple little spots to knock down maybe, now that I have it out here in the light. But I think this is going to work. We still have to finish the flywheel. I didn't get it finished last night. It got dark. But that's where we are. And we'll see if we got a running 48 Plymouth here in a little bit.